welcome to our webinar. So March, we are celebrating women because it is Women's History Month, and International Women's Day was just last weekend. So here we are to talk about empowered evolution, celebrating the strengths and successes of women. And I had so much fun picking through people I know to put this panel together. So with that, we'll start off with introductions. So my name is Tracy McDonald. I'm the Director of Custom Training at the Learning and Development Initiative, which is a collab, as the kids like to say, between New Jersey Institute of Technology and the New Jersey Innovation Institute. And our focus is all professional development and upskilling and reskilling, and really anything that is geared toward professional education that is not attached to some sort of a credentialed degree. So I'm just going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, and I'm just going to go in the order of the slides here. So Angie, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Angelica Ogando, but you can call me Angie because nobody ever uses my government name. I like to say that I am a storyteller by trade, but I actually do learning and development. And so we do a lot of focus on leadership and soft skills development, but there's nothing soft about soft skills. We call them power skills. We also do coaching. I'm a multipreneur, so I own two businesses, Yoshida Academy and Warrior Queen Cosmetics, and everything that I do is focused on helping women reclaim their power and create a new story for themselves.
Excellent. Thank you. Terrific. Petya, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Petya Morozov. I'm also a multi-hatted person. I am the principal of an architectural firm called Mad Lab. In my current roles, I am director of a publishing and public project studio called Dense, and also one of the inaugural fellows as part of Newark Design Collaborative, which is an initiative that is part of Hillier College of Architecture and Design.
Excellent. Thank you. Virginia.
Hi, I'm Virginia Sotrano. I spent several decades in business journalism. I now do consulting on a wide range of communications issues for-profit and not-for-profit entities. Everything from their communication strategy plans to writing speeches and feature presentations for these companies. And I also run a local news site in northern New Jersey.
Excellent. Thank you. Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Rachel Herskovitz. I am in charge of content partnerships at iHeartMedia. So what that really means is I sell television shows or video content. So on Monday, you can watch on Fox the iHeartRadio Music Awards, and that is what my team does. Been there for almost 9 years, and I'm actually taking a reset after the show. So I will have a little bit of time to be doing some consulting for Prohaska, and I also run a group called Montclair Media, which is where I met Tracy, and it's about 400 people in the Montclair, Greater Essex area, in media and entertainment. And the goal of the group is to meet every other month. We're working on monthly, and to grow not only your network professionally, but also to grow your connections with people in your area. So there's a little bit more to it than just like we work in the same industry. So we're really excited about that and how it's grown. And I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. So the premise of this conversation today is that women are creative, strong, agile, empathetic. We reinvent ourselves more or less every day. We are mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts. We are colleagues. We are mentors. We are learners. And all of those qualities and characteristics, I think, are part of what make us unique and able to do things like start your own local news company or build a community of like-minded people, or be a fellow for a design collaborative as well as a practicing architect, or be a chief operating officer of just an incredible company that is growing and changing and helping people and teaching us how to tell our stories better. I think I do think that women are special that way. So because it's Women's History Month, just to give everybody a little tiny bit of perspective. So we are in the year 2025, right? Everybody knows that. In 1920, women, and I struggled picking the right word, Virginia, I should have asked you about this, somewhere between earned, received, or fought for the right to vote. So that was 1920. In 1974, so 54 years later, that might have also been the first year of Saturday Night Live, women were able to get a credit card in their own name without their husbands having to co-sign. So this was a huge step for financial independence. The first woman CEO was Anna Sutherland Bissell. Now that was back in 1889, and that was really only after her husband died. So I'm going to say she had an advantage over most women. Now, in 2025, there are 52 female CEOs of public corporations, right? I'm not saying smaller private ones, but public corporations, and 12 million women-owned businesses. So that's a lot since not just 1889, but 1920. And I had, following a trip to Boston, a great little postcard that I keep at my desk that says, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." So with that, I'll go to our first question. And I'm so curious to hear from all of you. So women are strong and adaptable. We've established that. So I would love to know, have any of you ever been told that you are too much or not enough? And how did you reclaim your narrative? Did you own it, or you were like, "Oh no, I gotta make an adjustment here"? Virginia, you're laughing hysterically, so you're gonna have to go first, because I've known you long enough that I think I know the answer to the question. Go ahead.
I don't know if I ever told you this story. When I was interviewed for my first job in journalism, which was a position at the Wall Street Journal's then brand new European operation. The interview was done in New York, and the guy who did the interview was a very courtly Southern gentleman. And so I came into the interview, I had my little notebook full of questions, and I went bing, 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 through all my questions. And I heard only several months later, when I was finally at my desk in Brussels, that when the Southern gentleman went back to Brussels to report on his interviews, he said, "Yes, I interviewed a lot of people, but the best one was that pushy woman."
Sorry. You know what? Good on you. That's great.
There was an extra word in there that I won't repeat, but yeah, I was the pushy woman. And I just thought, well, I've learned, I've been trained to do things according to certain standards. And this job requires that things get done according to certain standards. So I will continue to do things according to certain standards. And that's what I did.
Excellent. I love that story. I saw a lot of smiles on faces, so whoever wants to go next, I think I know many answers here, but I would love to hear from each of you.
I love that you received that type of feedback, Virginia. Good for you. Congratulations for being the pushy woman. Because that means you were able to reclaim back that belief that was put on you. Sometimes we take on the things that people say and we'll wear it like a chinchilla coat in the middle of the winter of Chicago, let me tell you. And we're gonna use it, we're gonna wear it the whole season, like the whole winter season, because that's what they put on us. And I'm going to share with you a story about what I've been told. I've been told, because I'm Latina, and Latinas are loud most of the time. And it's not that we're loud, we're passionate. I've been told, oh, you're too passionate, Angie. Sometimes you're too bold and direct. You need to have a filter sometimes. Or maybe sometimes you're too preachy when you talk. You need to tone it down a little bit. And for the longest time, I was internalizing all of those things that I had been told, because as Latina, we're constantly being told, oh, you guys speak too fast. You're too passionate. You're always, screaming about everything that you say. And I would question myself, should I be toning myself down? Maybe I should be shrinking myself a little bit so that everybody feels comfortable in the room when I walk in it. And then I had to think about it, and I said, no, wait a second. No, I don't care if this makes you uncomfortable. I decided to reclaim that back. That passion that you see, because I love to talk with my hand, that passion that you see, that's my power. So what I started to do was reframe those projections, because that's what it was. It was a projection onto me. I started to reframe it and put it in the positive. Wait, that passion you see, that's because I have power. My boldness means that I'm brilliant, because I'm amazing. I'm incredible. My directness means that I'm a master communicator and that I communicate with clarity, because I want to make sure that when I say something, you're not assuming something that I didn't say. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think and what I believe. And the last thing about being preachy, because I get this all the time, and I didn't want to be too preachy. The thing is that I'm a woman of God. I'm blessed. I'm favored. I can't code switch for people. I had to show up authentically as myself. And sometimes the authentic part of me is going to sound preachy because I love God. And so what I am is inspirational. And that's how I reframe that for myself.
I would just like to, first of all, I love the two responses so far. I'm going to come at it slightly differently, where, going to school to study architecture typically means that you're going to end up as an architect. But I took that to mean something entirely different. I had already been raised in a family of architects, and I saw them wearing many hats. I saw them as entrepreneurs, as new immigrants into the States, how they struggled to play out their professional lives, and they took on many other hats beyond the ones that they were trained for. So when I went to architecture school, I realized how many more skills I was able to bring with me. And so my mission as an architect is actually to expand how we practice how women in particular could practice architecture, not on the fringes of architecture, but to ensure that not just the folks who become licensed architects are the only legitimate ones, but the folks who are anywhere from like community activists who are helping communities maintain their sense of place, all the way up to policy and everything in between, because that is all effectively a type of architecture that plays out in different ways. So I have been told that that's taking on too much, but luckily I have found a fellowship that really responds to the way I'd like to see architecture practiced, and so I'm hoping the next generation of architects can take a cue from what I have learned and turn it into a positive instead of a stigma. That's
amazing. I like that. And I think that next generation will. I've experienced your passion for what you're doing. And I think it's going to be amazing by the time you're done with it. Rachel?
I think, so I've been told, I'll tell a story. So I work at iHeart, I'm here. I made this sort of career pivot from marketing into more television and production when I was 31. I'm 40 now. So, it was sort of this big thing I took on that I wanted to change, not change direction so much as grow my toolkit, right? Like all of this stuff is interconnected in this industry. I'm very passionate about telling stories and content and getting that to the right places. So it was only a natural growth through my toolkit. So I came into this job and I wouldn't say I was not confident, but I certainly didn't have the like pure skill set that maybe somebody would have been hired to do. I had like 50% of it, maybe not the other 50%. So I had a really tough sort of mountain to climb in terms of my fundamental skills, which was a great opportunity and one I'm happy to say like I believe I did. But during that, as I got more confident in my skill set, I also started to really push for more projects, more elevation, promotions, you know, sort of like more people under me to grow the business. And that's met with a really dirty word called you're ambitious. And women being ambitious is like, oh God. And I don't even know that my boss at the time said it to somebody to sort of say like, this is why she's putting you like off-putting to you. And he didn't mean it like, that's why he hired me. He liked that I was ambitious. But one of my women counterparts, this was actually one thing, really didn't like it. And so I had to think about, okay, well, is ambition meaning I'm too much? Do I need to put this away? I think we're all sort of saying the same thing. Like, do we need to hide this part of us, or do we need to really step into it and say, yeah, fuck yeah, I am ambitious and I don't care who stands in my way. So I ended up deciding that ambition is a great thing. How it presents itself, especially at big companies, is you either get those big promotions and everyone just ends up like reporting to you, and that is what it is, or you've got to bring people along for the journey and make them be bought into why you being ambitious is a great thing for everybody else. And just to sort of close that up, like what ended up happening with this woman who was one of my closest coworkers is I had to have a sit down meeting with her and say like, what about me is allowing you not to want to work with me or to be talking about me or to be telling people that I'm not A, B, C, and D. And just a tip for everyone, I'm sure the women on the panel know this, when you confront somebody to their face that says something that you internalize as like a bad thing, 90% of the time they'll walk it back and they'll be like, oh, you know, I meant it like this or whatever. And then you get to explain to each other face to face, maybe we don't have to be friends, but we have to like exist. And so what I ended up learning from this whole thing was ambition's not a bad thing. How it comes across to some people can be really off-putting. So how do you not hide it, but you work within the constraints of those around you? Like you're not going to not be yourself, but if people know you like at your core and you're a good person and you have their interests in mind, they can get over some of this other stuff that they think is sort of, you know, too much for them. Because we have to be too much. There's nobody really vying for us in our roles, especially if, you know, you are a mom and you took time off with your kids, and, you know, you really have to make the case that you are all in on your job and all in on your passion, but, you know, without being off-putting. So it's a really interesting balance that I think we've all sort of lived through.
I couldn't agree with you more. It is a challenge, and I think especially among women and among women who are self-motivated. You know, it can still be intimidating if it feels like somebody is pushing you out of the way to do something for themselves. And if you can have that conversation, to have the partnership, then the strength from working together can just blow everything out of the water, which is amazing. Which actually, this is great because Rachel, your story is a perfect segue into my next question.
Good, I didn't even plan that.
Yeah, I know. Look at that. It's amazing how these things work out. So defining career moments. I think we've probably all had them. And for anyone, you know, who is listening in, I think that there's comfort, or at least I find comfort in knowing that if I've had this moment and someone else has had it, I'm like, oh, thank God. Okay. It's not just me. So I would love to hear from all of you what your defining career moment was, and was it a failing forward moment? Was it an incredible success and you just surprised the heck out of everybody who was around you? Or was it this, wait a minute, I've got this amazing idea and I can actually make it happen, and it made a difference in, whether it could be anything. It could be just how you approached your career. It could be your organization. It could be a department. It could be, how you managed multiple competing priorities. So what have some of your defining career moments been?
Can I go? Is it okay if I go first?
Sure.
Is it okay?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one, I hope my defining career moments are in front of me, not behind me, but let's assume I have more to come.
Fair point.
But there's a lot. And I think for all of us that work and do lots of different things, there'll be multiple moments that you'll look back at and say, wow, that was a really interesting pivot point, or that was a really interesting piece of feedback. And you sort of take these, my mother-in-law says this about kids all the time. It's like you take these moments and they're like strings on a pearl, and you have this like big pearl necklace of all these great little moments you have with your kids, good and bad, but they're like these like great memories. And I think about that as the career journey too. Like at each job I've had, at each inflection point for me, I've had a moment of, and I'll get to an actual story of, somebody gave me a piece of feedback, somebody gave me advice, somebody, pointed something out to me, and I took those things as little nuggets and I use them even today to like guide forward. So for example, I was at American Express before this job, which is super duper corporate. Like I'm not that corporate as it is. I just like, even wearing a suit was too much for me, but I was at American Express and I had this great boss. And I knew I didn't fit. My reviews were like fine. I was trying to overcome some stuff, and I was making a presentation for this project we were working on that was going to some of the bosses in the department. And I was dying over this. I wouldn't show it to her. I couldn't show her the PowerPoint. I was like freaking out. And she said, she looks me dead in the eye and she goes, you have to operate at 80%. Like, I know you want it to be 100. Maybe that doesn't go for architecture because it has to be perfect. But for this, in this industry, it's like, what's your minimum viable product? How much can you do if it wasn't 100%, but it was 80? Could you do the presentation? Could you talk about it? Could you plot the unknowns, even though you don't know them down the road? And I think about that piece of feedback all the time. Every time I'm doing something, I'm like, I don't know everything, but I know enough to keep the conversation going, to keep the ball rolling. And is that a defining moment in my career? No, but it's definitely taken hold in my brain as something that I use all the time. And there's a million more examples of that, where if you're really paying attention and you're open to learning, you can take these things and redefine it to you. So what happened? The project got approved. It ended up being this like, we did a television channel at American Express, which was like this weird thing. And it ended up being a thing that I like hung my hat on to then switch my job. But the advice was the thing that mattered. And being open to hearing that advice, not as a negative on you, but rather a like, okay, I should take this, internalize it, see what it means, move forward, and then pay it forward to somebody else when they ask me for stuff, like how could they operate? But I'm sure I have a million more nuggets like that, but that's just one that I really still think about it all the time. And it was probably 15 years ago at this point.
Excellent. Who else wants to share a defining career moment?
I'll share a defining moment for me. And it was many moons ago in 2002. I was a fresh engineer out of NJIT because I'm a double alum of NJIT. And I was working for this company. I was doing civil engineering. I was working for a small company. And I was a good engineer. But I'm going to tell you this. I knew since I was young, I should probably have not gone into engineering, and I should have been doing what I'm doing now. But there's a part of me, because I come from a culture, I'm Dominican, I come from a culture where there's this expectation that you're either going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. And so my mother wanted me to be like my uncle, who's this very well-known engineer in Dominican Republic, civil engineer. And so I wanted to please my parents. And of course, the natural route, I went into engineering. I was a good engineer. Thing is, it wasn't my passion. My passion has always been speaking, leading, coaching, training, tutoring. That was always my thing. But I went into it. The best thing that happened to me was that I got fired from this job. The best thing. It's the best thing that could have happened to me. I
I
fired.
love that. I love that.
When I was fired from this job, I was already moonlighting, and I'll call it moonlighting, doing financial services, because I was looking for an out. I was looking for a road out of engineering, because let me tell you, I experienced a lot of misogyny. I experienced a lot of machismo. We call it machismo in Spanish. I experienced a lot of microaggressions, being most of the times in the places I worked in, being the only Black Latina or Black person in the group, being the only woman in the group, and being the only gets tiring. Being the only can be frustrating. It weighs on you. So when I was fired from this job, I had to really think about what I was going to do next. I had been presented an opportunity to step into, because I was doing so well in this financial service company that I was moonlighting in. I was doing so well that they had offered me a position where I moved up into leadership within this company. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going to step into. So I literally transitioned from engineering to doing financial services. And I decided I was doing so well in that role particularly, that there were gaps that I noticed that I was missing, because I was an engineer. I think in systems and processes. I overanalyze everything. Business is not that way. What I realized was I don't have the business acumen that I really need. So I decided to go back to school and get my MBA, so that now I was appropriately trained for the position that I was in. Best thing that happened to me. When I realized that I was supposed to transition and step into this, is when I realized, you know what? This is my defining moment. Because if I would have stayed in engineering, I would have been miserable. I would have been hating what I was doing and not having the impact that I had.
I love that. Most people would not say the best thing that's ever happened to me is I got fired. But I love the way that you're owning it. And I think that also just goes with your other stories and your personality. And it's like, okay, this is actually an opportunity, and takes a lot of reflection, I think, to
we're
get there.
not honest enough with our stories. And sometimes people think you go from rags to riches, you have this success story, but what happens in between? What happens when life gets hard, when you have challenges? For some of you who are mothers, when you become a mom and now you're expected to stay home because women can't have it all. You can't be, an executive or an entrepreneur, be successful and be a mom. That's just not true. You just decide and prioritize what's important to me, and whatever is important to me better have an impact to somebody else.
Angie, I think we should have some martinis, because I had the same path. I think we maybe mentioned this earlier when we were talking a few weeks ago. Same path, went into engineering because it was expected of me. My parents talked me out of architecture, went into engineering, a top engineering school, and my way of discovering how I lacked passion was just that I flunked out. It was it was not because of intellect, it was not because of anything other than I didn't have it in me. So you took my story, but I'll offer another one. It has more to do with my aha moment, or my failing forward moment, was realizing that how I was experiencing design, and what design's true impact is to create stories of impact, not to be the thing in and of itself. I think there's a fetishizing of design that as long as you're surrounded by incredible design, the world is great. It's how it's used. It's how people experience it. The stories that they create from the environments that they're in matter much more. I mean, we can take a beautiful plaza and see that it's a site of protest. You know, like there's so many ways in which architecture and our built environment have tremendous impacts on us. And so that was like a lightning bulb for me. A light bulb, but maybe a lightning rod.
It could have been both.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was like, I realized that design really has another impact that it can offer. And so once I realized that it was ultimately that design and architecture were vehicles toward storytelling and impactful storytelling that could impact the future, then that's when my early days of wanting to be a writer, like when I was actually 18, I wanted to be a writer. It kind of all came full circle to me. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, and since you left off on wanting to become a writer, Virginia, what was your defining career moment? Or has it happened yet? I don't know. Right?
Well, there could be more, who knows? But I was the senior editor at Forbes.com on 9/11. And we had, from our office on 23rd Street, we had a clear view of downtown. And it was very apparent that something had gone very wrong that day. And this was in the early days of the internet, you know, things were not as developed. And so our phones were ringing, we were getting rumor after rumor after rumor, you know, a building in Chicago's been hit, this has happened, that's happened. And I'm leading a team of people who were mostly my age, but many a lot younger at that point, with a brand new boss who had only come in from the UK a week and a half earlier and really didn't know New York at all. So I had to, for every rumor that a reporter threw my way, we had to figure out how we were going to confirm it. Phone lines had gone down. You were barely able to get through to people. There was one that the Sears Tower in Chicago had been hit. I had worked for a company, a previous publishing company that had an office in Chicago. I knew they had a view of the Sears Tower because I'd been out there. And I called up one of my old buddies and I said, what can you see from your window? Is the Sears Tower still there? And it seemed, it was only hours, but it seemed like it was weeks and years of sorting through rumors at an unprecedented pace, calming staffers who had people they knew who worked downtown, and trying to put out what little we knew of what was going on and not making a bad situation worse. What I learned from it was obviously managing through a crisis. I learned that very fast. I'd never really been trained for that. I learned to try as many routes as I can and encourage the people who were on staff that day to try as many routes as they could to verify facts and to put aside anything that could not absolutely be verified. You know, what I walked away from that all with was one of the things that I often find myself doing for corporations now is writing a crisis communication plan. Before any other communication strategy plan, I need to know that they have a plan in place to talk to people internally and externally when the worst thing happens. And sometimes people will tell me that I'm overreacting, you know, like, oh, that's not going to happen here. No. And I'm like, people, if you don't imagine the worst, and if you don't prepare for the worst, it's going to be an even bigger problem. I learned to stay focused on the facts, and I learned to focus on the biggest problems first. Deal with them first, if at all possible, and then move on to the rest. And that has proven very effective and useful for me, because look, on any given day on this planet, something is going to be going wrong. But we have to be able to see what's an immediate crisis and what's a bad day and act accordingly. So yeah, that was that.
Wow. I've never heard that story before, and I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
But it makes so much sense. And I think that in the business world, in any industry, on any day, you can have an emergency, you can have an all hands on deck, you can have a crisis that might not be or feel like a crisis to the whole world, right? Like 9/11 was, but something that, could be just a huge reputational issue or an operating issue. And I think being able to keep a level head, right? So that's what that defining moment, I think there's something we can all learn from that. Those are all great stories. Thank you. So we've heard a lot about things that have made you all as amazing as you are and what's happened in your life. And just like, any good hero's journey, right? There is often sacrifice that comes with success, right? I think it was Rachel, you said it earlier, because women can't have it all. We have to stay home. We have to be, and I've read books where women who have very high power positions say that women can have it all and we can do it. And then I'm reading between the lines and I'm like, well, yeah, but your husband really helped you out a lot. And you probably were able to afford 6 different people to help you usher your kids around, clean your house, make your meals. That's not the case for most of the rest of us. So I think that there's a level of reality and yes, prioritization. And with any effort of prioritization, there's a trade-off, right? That's right. So when I was getting my MBA, that was one of the most important things that I learned, right? Along with your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? Right. Oh, and then the other one was that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So those 3 big nuggets, right? It's I can see you can all relate, but what sacrifices? What was one difficult decision that you each had to make for your career that people don't talk about enough? What are we not sharing with younger women, younger men, anybody new coming into the workforce, anybody who's a colleague who has a perception that things are of a certain way when in fact maybe they're not? What do you all think?
So I might have the youngest, I don't know, maybe I have the youngest kids here. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. So people will be like, oh, you're in it. So I'm in it. They're little. I just got through 2 maternity leaves and childcare, and both my husband and I work and travel a lot. And even though I'm taking this reset, like my intent is not to not work. I will be going back in some, whatever capacity happens. So from what sacrifices do we make and what don't people know? I think that the biggest thing that I've thought about recently is sometimes I have stayed at this job significantly longer than I would have liked to, because it afforded me flexibility with my children and flexibility for my husband, who runs his own company. So I think some of the things people don't talk about is not, because I wouldn't say this is like career stagnation or that I've taken a step out of it or anything, but I would say that I stayed put because it allowed me to have time. And I think that that is a sacrifice, because you're not going after the next thing, or you get a little bit I don't know, like I'm a little old, not old at my job. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm a little bit, I'm like phoning it in. And I think that there's that too, but it was this like trade-off. It was, well,
Mhm.
if I can be at this job and it affords me time to do the doctor's appointments and to be more present and to take breaks and, you know, not get home at 5, but like be around more. I don't have to be at an office because I've been here for so long and all this stuff. I was like, well, I don't want to leave my job. And then once I leave my job and I have to prove myself to a new place all over again, I'd rather wait a little. So I really punted this down the road until my kids were around this age because they're slightly older. They're not they're not babies. They have stuff going on, but it's not that I'm not needed. It's different. So I really was like, okay, I'm sacrificing my own maybe mental health, maybe my own sense of worth because it made more sense for my family. And I think people don't think about it's not just your kids, it's not just you, it's not just your husband, it's this whole family unit. And what are the best choices that you can make that maybe aren't the best for you, but they're the best for the family? And then like at what point can you change those things? And I don't think that there's such a thing as having it all, but I do think that we can prioritize and outsource with your community. It doesn't always need to be like paid help, use your friends, use your schools, use the whatever you got to try to co-op other resources that you can. You need some time on a Saturday, send your kid out on a play date or whatever as best as you can. So, but yes, I would definitely say I sacrificed my mental health for the family because I didn't like it anymore. But it's just one of many choices we all have had to make when you're like, I want a family and there's nothing better than that. But it's hard.
I can totally relate. As you're saying, like you can't have it all, or if you try having it all, you're gonna maybe be mediocre at a whole bunch of things.
Exactly.
And I think that was my realization that there's so many things that I'm interested in doing and want to do, and that's it's part of the passion that I bring to what I do. And I have realized, I guess also because but feeling a little more seasoned, that all in good time. Like, I think it'll happen when it needs to happen. Like, just because you have a passion doesn't mean it needs to come to full fruition. It's not like a sign of failure. It is, but to do something really well and to give it the sort of the time that it deserves, it might be okay to let some things just sit on the back burner, and that's just the reality of it, as opposed to being like, oh shit, I want to just do all these things. And so I think that was my realization, was like, oh, okay, slow down, like be okay with just letting one thing sort of settle in as it needs to. So patience, maybe, which is not something I had when I was like 22. I just wanted to do everything.
You and me both, sister. Other thoughts? And then I've got another, I think, really fun question next. And in the interest of time, I do want to allow some time for questions from our audience if people have those. So we'll take one more success and sacrifice story, or
So I'll share something with you because I have a slightly different story than all of you. I'm not a mother. I'm 45 years old. And I did sacrifice that part of me. I was married in the past, and I'm divorced now. And I think something that we don't talk about enough, my success and sacrifice is connected with the career defining moment, because that opportunity I told you all that I had was with my ex-husband to join his company. And he owned his own firm. And I think sometimes what happens when we become entrepreneurs and then we go into partnership with our significant other, we sacrifice our own desires, our own dreams to help the other. And what ended up happening was that I left the guy because my integrity, my self-worth was put to the test. And I couldn't stay no longer in a situation where I wasn't being valued or seen or heard, or all of the other things that happen to us when we give up that part of our life. And so when I left, people thought I was crazy because I was financially independent. We had this incredible life. And everybody was like, you're going to start all over again at the age of 35. This was 10 years ago. I'm 45. I'm telling you this. They're like, you're going to start all over again. Why would you do that? And I said, why wouldn't I? They're like, you should return to engineering. Heck no, I'm not going back to that because that's not my ministry and that's not my purpose. And I said, I'm going to dedicate my life to women who are in a point of transition and don't know what is the next for them, because I know what being at the bottom feels like, looks like. And I'm going to make sure that the next woman doesn't feel like she has to stay in a situation and sacrifice the things that she wants, her dreams and her desires, to satisfy somebody else's. And I agree with all of you. You do make sacrifices and you prioritize things in their moment, what I like to call in their season. That doesn't mean that you have to give up those dreams, just so you won't understand. Yeah.
I'm really happy you shared that story because I think that transition, is just, it's so important to know that like our worth is not tied to somebody else's, even though we're all talking about sacrificing for the greater family needs or whatever that family is. And the sacrifices could also be internal because, you know, you're not feeling, any of us aren't feeling great at a moment, or we need a mental health break, or like, again, I keep talking about this, but like I'm taking a reset because I like really need it. So that's an amazing company. It's an amazing need. We're always in transition. Women are, I think, maybe more so than men. And it's really important to remember that you don't know what other people are going through and why they're doing it. And it's just thinking about people's personal journeys as well. So I appreciate you sharing that a lot.
Rachel.
You're welcome.
Angie, your story gave me the chills. I will say that. Wow. I'm just going to take a moment here and let all of that just kind of sink in. Okay. So this is actually the next question is actually going to fit really well with where we just were. Unfiltered advice. Now, I think at this point, you all know me well enough to know that I don't want to know about the best advice you've received. I want to know what the worst advice was that you received. Did you take it? What did you do with it? What happened?
So, I didn't take the advice, or I don't even know if I would call it advice. I was still in journalism. I was a week away from adopting my second child, and I'd gone into my boss's office to present him with a plan about how my job was going to get done while I was not there to do it, right? We've all been there. And another editor was in the room and said, well, you know, you're going to have to come back. Oh, and I had been working partially remotely from home because I was setting up the Asian and European stories early in the morning. This other editor in the room said, well, when you come back, you're going to have to be in the office 5 days a week. That's how we need to function. You've got to be here. And it came out of my mouth so fast that I thought, I don't know where this is coming from, but I just said, no. And, you know, his advice, it was clear, was not going to work for me in the immediate, and his advice was not going to work for me in the long term. So my message, I guess, is to have your North Star, have a strong sense of where you need to be. And if somebody tells you, you've got to do things this way, go back to that North Star and say, no.
Thank you. Other bits of advice or not advice or thoughts that
Oh, I'm.
You all
I'm just.
received?
It so resonates.
Oh.
I, it just so resonates. I was just going to say, Virginia, that I don't know if it's a North Star, but like something that I have been trying to retune myself to, my mind, my body, my environment, like the universe around me, the ecosystem, the infrastructure that I'm a part of, the network, like to try to read it much better through my sense of intuition, and like to trust my intuition more, and just to allow that to guide me more. And I think that I think I gave myself my own worst advice, to be like, oh, like they must all be right. And I really lost a sense of my own voice and my own self-confidence in listening to others. So, I mean, it's not to say that isn't a part of it. It's just when it's done in a way where someone is, using shorthand for like, well, I just don't approve of what you're doing, or I think it's just going in the wrong direction. There isn't that kind of, vote of confidence. That finding it within yourself can be so reassuring, but it's also one of the hardest things, because you're so used to having to hear everyone else tell you what to do, whether that's like, from a professional trauma or a personal trauma, so I really resonate with all of that. And I am taking my own new advice that I should listen to my intuition. And so far it has guided me in a really powerful way.
It's great.
Excellent.
My uncle is one of my most important mentors. He very successful, etc., in media and entertainment. So I planned to leave a job, I don't know, 15 years ago to go to a startup, which, oh God, startup, like, ugh. And he's like, he is of this generation where everything was very linear, right? You came up in a very particular way and you stayed in that function, and that was the way you got promoted. And it really was, that was the way. So this was like my pivot before this pivot. So I said, I want to go learn advertising technology, and these founders seem legit. And my husband had known them a little bit, and whatever, what's the worst that could happen? I get fired, which I did, by the way, because they got acquired by somebody and they let us all go. But I went to a dinner, and I had just been promoted onto like a new account at a media agency. And then I gave my notice, and I said, I'm going to go to this other company. And he looked us across the table and he was like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, why would you do that? Why would you give up this huge like opportunity? I did not take his advice. And we're super close. So like years later, the reason why I've gotten some of these other jobs or have this different, interesting network, or, can sort of talk a little bit about this other area, is because I took that job. And by the way, career tracks now, for the most part, are not they are zigzags. I was just out with another mentor yesterday for breakfast, and she was like, I wish I had the opportunity to zigzag. So I say that because this is somebody whose advice I internalize all the time for everything, because I really want to emulate the career that he's had. But do your own research, do your research. People that are coming from a place over here don't always know what you need, don't always know the cultural shifts you need, don't always know, the risks are small, really, truly, they're small. Like I didn't even have a house then. Like, so again, the worst thing happened. And own that choice. And it was fine. It was fine. We're still close. I still take his advice. And he said to me, like, that was a really good move. That was a really interesting network that you made from that. Like, what good experience. And he didn't know that then, and neither did I. But I do think that all of us talking about listening to your internal voice is the thing that we need to pay attention to more, even if it pisses off people that you typically hold really high in their advice, because they don't always know what's best for you either. Only you know that when you listen to it.
I think that there's something in learning to listen to ourselves, right? And learning to also know who you are, right? Do I want to take a risk with this new thing just because that's me and that's what I like doing? And I'm not this more conservative, careful person, or, it's a challenge. I love a challenge. I think there's a lot to that. And it sounds like we've all done it, which I love. I'm so glad that you all came together and that we were having this conversation today, truly. There's definitely more that we all have in common that I'll save for cocktails, because I think that's important also. I want to open it up to questions. If there's anybody in the audience who has a question, we started a few minutes late, but I do want to give some time for that. And if we don't have any questions, then I'm just going to show on the next slide what some other things are that we have coming up in March, because it is Women's History Month. The next webinar is all about how to remain relevant. What are the skills that women need? So that one's a little bit of human skills and technology skills. Bunch of workshops. The Bold Yet Balanced, that one is specifically designed for women, because sometimes it's difficult when you are, Angie, you said it, right? The only woman walking into a room full of men. And how do you own that? And how do you speak in a way that people know to respect you right from the very beginning? There's also, and it's not on here, but I believe that there's one more session coming up, Talk and Be You. That's also part of it. How to walk in, how to own the room, how to speak, how to look, how to prepare yourself. And I think that these are all skills that, I do think women learn them, but when you have the opportunity to be taught them and then practice, I know there are some things that I've used from that workshop because I sat in on it. I don't see any questions, but if there are any final thoughts that you all would like to leave our audience with, now would be the time to share them. Yep. Wait, Virginia, you're muted. Sorry.
No, I would just like to reinforce the point that Rachel made about keeping a network active and open. Absolutely have to do that at every step. And not everybody will be able to be by your side to guide you, to support you in whatever challenge is next. But keep your network going, check in with people regularly, not like, hey, hi, do you have a job for me? But what are you reading? Where'd you go last week? Any good restaurants that you've come across that you need me to know? Just think of soft conversation starters, but absolutely feed the network all the time.
Excellent advice.
I love that, Virginia. My final thoughts are that your lived experiences, your cultural backgrounds, your assets, those transferable skills that you have are your superpowers. Show up to every space, claim it, own your voice, your story, share it with people, because it does have an impact and you have no idea whose life you're going to change.
Well said.
I'll add a last point. I owe so much to my mentors, and I would love to keep nurturing that within my own network. And so I think there's so many ways that we can give back, and mentoring is one of them. Just as this feels like a space of mentorship, and that it pays back in dividends. Like, just to be able to, as you started out, Tracy, like, I think built inside of those historical moments are moments of mentorship in one way or another. So the networks, the mentoring, all of that, it's so profound.
Community, right? Rachel, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everybody. I think it's so interesting too, because we all have very different backgrounds and very different careers, and the fundamentals are the same, which is listen to your internal voice, grow and nurture that network and pay it forward, and tell your story and be who you are uniquely without sacrificing it. And like I don't know that I could add anything else that would be more important to that. Oh, I do actually have one. Sorry. Keep learning, keep being curious. Just because you do X does not mean that you have to stay doing X, or doesn't mean that you can't have a perspective on Y. So if you're in media and you want to have a perspective on PR, you can defer to the experts, but you can have an opinion and learn about it and whatever, or you can pursue a passion that has nothing to do with work, because that makes you a more well-rounded, interesting individual that allows you to bond with your network in a different way, right? Like, I like to run, so I have friends that run. That's great. I get to talk about it with people. So you are not solely defined by your work either. And that's, like Angela's saying, it allows you to show up as you. And I think that that's really, really special, because we're all individually bringing something to the table. So I think we have a lot of good stuff to take away from this.
Well, I'm going to say it. I think that today is one of the best webinars that we've had, one of the best conversations. And webinar is just not the right word for this kind of a thing. But for lack of a better term, it's the conversation has been amazing. The honesty, the sharing of stories, the community. It's I think it's public. I'm still learning how all this works with Zoom. But one of the attendees was asking how to stay in touch with people and with this group, and I'm really thinking of maybe creating a women's group as part of the LDI, and we can learn with each other and we can connect with each other and we can share advice. And maybe, I mean, I'm already planning ahead for women specific programming for the fall. So I think that there are definitely opportunities. And so for anybody who is here, if you're not sure, just email me, or we can be sure to keep it, to actually include it in, we'll send an email with the recording to everybody following the event. So we'll make sure that our LinkedIn profiles are in there. And among my panelist friends, if any of you do not want your LinkedIn, just let me know. We'll talk about it after that. Totally respect privacy. But I do think that there's an opportunity here, and I'm feeling that thing that I have felt a handful of times before in my life when I have said, okay, I need to step up and do something here. And today was great. This was inspirational. You are all lovely, amazing, smart, talented, incredible, courageous, strong, brave women. And I could not have asked. Oh, thank you.
You too. Yes. Thank you for putting this together.
No, thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing what our next chapter is, because I do believe that there will be one.
And me too. I'd like to talk with everybody. Thank you so much. I can't wait to, there's another chapter to this.
Yeah. There is. There's definitely something. 100%. It's Friday. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thank you again so much. And
thank you. Bye.